Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Julian and Melissa. How you guys doing today?
Hey, how is everyone out there?
Well, we decided to come together and we're going to talk about some lessons learned in 2020. Me and a few other friends that are coming in are here. We're excited, and we're going to talk about a lot of things that happened. So, just very quickly, hun, like, what was 2020 like for you?
2020 was a roller coaster, I think is the easiest way to say that. We started off the year, if you remember, hun, we started off just thinking this is going to be a great year. We're in a new decade. No one knew what to expect. In fact, my birthday is in January.
That's right.
And my husband started off the year strong.
Strong.
He whisked me away
Come on,
to
talk
New
about it,
York
girl.
City.
Yes, girl.
And he took, I didn't know what was happening. He didn't tell me. Next thing I know, I'm in New York City, like 20 something stories up in the air at some fancy hotel.
Go ahead.
Takes me Broadway is like my thing. And so he took me to Broadway shows. We just started off the year exciting. I was pumped. We were ready. And then, things just started happening. So I would say it was just a roller coaster, but it was also a time of renewal for me, because we were forced to slow down, just like so many others. And so it was challenging, but also invigorating at the same time.
So this year, right now, we're going to take you on a journey with us. But before we get on to start on the journey, we have a few friends that we're going to bring on. Thank you so much for being with us today, and welcome again to 2020 Lessons Learned. Yo, we're back with 2020 Lessons Learned, and we have some guests in here today. I have my good friends, Joel George and Pierre Quinn. We have a couple other people that will drop in when they're available. And I'm so excited to be able to share with you what's going on. So what's up, Pierre? Pierre, what's going on, man?
Man, last day of the year, man. Excited to be on. Appreciate the work you've been doing with Built to Thrive the entire year, man. It's just a time for us to reflect and realize, man, we all didn't start the year strong like you. You set the bar real high. But I think we have the opportunity to start 2021 just as strong.
Man, thank you so much. And Joel, man, it's just an honor to have you. Joel George is a healthcare leader, an awesome man, a great friend. Thank you so much for being on today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I think this is a great platform, and it seems like you did well this beginning of the year, Julian, man. You whisked her off her feet, man. We got to follow the same path,
Man, well, it was a great start to the year, and I was like, it's my wife's. We both turned 40 this year. 41? We 41 this year? Oh, shoot. We're a year older. And basically, man, we just wanted to do something that was going to be different and try something. And one of my things this year was to move into a place of discomfort. Now, I don't know who's out there watching, but this year I moved to a place of discomfort. I started Built to Thrive. You see it right here on your screen. And it's been a blessing being able to be mentored and be connected to Pierre and also to Joel, and also with my wife's support. I'm going to tell you, I wouldn't have been able to do anything this year without my wife. So love you, babe. Yeah. And my wife came on today. So I'm so glad my wife is on today. All right. So if you're in the chat, talk back to us. So what was 2020 like for either of you or all three of you that are on today?
Yeah, I guess I can just start and talk a little bit about what 2020 looked like. Obviously from a healthcare perspective, it was one of those years that we always say this word unprecedented, right? And so it's one of those years that we look at and you could never have thought that this would have happened. But one of the things that I think I've learned as far as just from a story perspective, I think has been, as leaders, we tend to sometimes be very, very responsive versus reactionary. And I think that's what we need to be in times like this. And so, for me specifically, it was more time with my kids, more time with my wife, more time with just being spiritually connected with God too as well. I actually enjoyed having that time back because I don't think that we're ever going to get that time back again, you know? And so that's just for me personally.
Yo, Joel, man, I think that you really said something there about getting some time back. I mean, who doesn't want more time back?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want some more opportunity to develop some more spiritual reservoir to be able to connect not only with those you love, but those who are in your life? Pierre, man, what did the year, how did it start off? How did it start off for you?
And we started off hot. I mean, we started off hot. We didn't start off Broadway, New York City hot, but we were hot. You know, October 2019, man, we made a transition. Our family made a transition from full-time pastoral ministry to working full-time in my leadership development consulting agency, the Cardell Group.
Yeah.
So we had so many prospects lined up for 2020. In fact, you know, Julie and Melissa, we were together at the beginning of 2020 for the Leading While Scared book tour.
That's right.
You know, we had such a great time down in Florida, you know, some strong projections for the year.
Yep.
Everything shifted dramatically. And it was one of those moments where you had to say, okay, what are my priorities here? What are the things that really, really matter? And I shared in a post a couple of weeks ago, you know, with the whole virtual school thing, you know, my kids, I end up being IT for my kids to do virtual school. And while I'm doing, you know, live things like you were doing. And I said something that really struck me. I said, there are so many of us who are in this virtual space who sometimes we don't turn on our camera because we're dealing with the exigencies of life, right?
True.
My daughters have the privilege. They have the privilege of turning off their camera in the middle of class and saying, hey, Dad, I need a hug. Hey, Dad, can you bring me a son? Hey, Dad, can you bring me a snack? And then, you know, collecting themselves and going back to class. But there are so many of us as working professionals who either don't have the privilege of turning off the camera and taking a moment or getting a hug from your parents or taking time out. So I'm like, wow, if I was on the road doing the speaking and training and not doing it via Zoom, I would have missed out on that opportunity to be there when my girls needed a moment. And my heart goes out to so many leaders who, you know, their parents have passed or the context of where they work. It's just not that space for them to kind of breathe and take a moment. So, man, even though, you know, grounded in many ways, travel schedules halted, lost some major contracts, but got some time, like Joel was saying, got some time with my family that, man, I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Absolutely.
And listen, man, you said a word there. What do you think about what he said, honey?
I mean, it's the truth. It's just the absolute truth. Prior to this whole pandemic, I just feel like we were flying just so fast. And I mean, our days, you know, we were rushing, right? You get up in the morning and it's just the grind of have your breakfast, got to get out the door, hurry up. You know, we got to keep going. And, you know, we would go to school. I dropped them at school. Julian and I would go to work. I come back. We got to take you to this club or to basketball practice or to whatever, just always running till we finally make it home. You know, the sun is down, it's late, and where's the quality time?
That's what I'm saying, man.
Where's the time spent on what really matters? We spent so much time doing things instead of really prioritizing people. And so I love what you just said, Pierre, because it's so true. We wouldn't have had that opportunity.
So right now we're about to bring in the Renaissance man, the one and only Christopher Bartley. He is the Renaissance man, the Worship and Word co-host every single Friday night and Saturday afternoon. He and Pierre are like twins, wearing pantyhose 2 sizes small. Together we die, together we fall. We tighter than pantyhose 2 sizes small. So
what a description!
Is that from Good Times?
That's old Good Times. That's right. So Chris, man, what's up? What's up, Chris?
I'm good. I think I came in at a very serendipitous time because, as you guys were just talking about prioritizing people over things to be done, I got a link to hop in here, and I'm like, but I still got to launch this store. I mean, my other side of my pantyhose 2 size too small, then did 4 nights. And I'm still here trying to, hey, listen. So, and I realized, you know what? People has to be part of the priority for this coming year for me. So
I like that.
I said, you know what? Yeah, man, let's do it. There's always going to be jobs to be done.
Yeah.
You know, I think 2020, if anything, has shown us that there will not always be people to ring in the new year with. And so, it's definitely that balance, the priority. So, so just clicking the link for me is the practice of what needs to happen for the coming year.
Yo, so Chris, man, you kind of helped us to kind of go to a point of reflection. And so I want to just kind of share. I'm going to share a word. I'm going to put a word on the screen. Yeah. And I want to hear your first reactions of this word. Now, when we went to New York, we're sitting there in the airport, and all of a sudden we see this. We see the word Kobe Bryant flash across the screen. Like it was unbelievable. I called my man Barone in California. He might come on. I said, yo, B, what is this real? So when you see Kobe Bryant in 2020 reflecting, what's one of the first things that you think of?
Man, I was actually doing a photo shoot. I had some t-shirts that come out for my book. Don't Stop Because You're Scared was one of the t-shirts. And my family was there. My wife and my kids were there. My friends Miguel and Sable were there. Evan was there. So we're doing some photography, videography, and we had been doing it for a couple of hours.
Yeah.
And I sat in the corner. I was scrolling through my phone, and I said, yo, everybody, I think Kobe just died. And everybody's like, what are you talking about? Stop playing. I was like, no. I'm seeing the news reports. I'm seeing social media picking up this story. Now I was hesitant because TMZ was first, and I was like, I don't know. It started picking up steam, and we found out it wasn't just Kobe, it was his daughter.
Yeah.
Immediately looked across the room to my 2 girls, and I'm thinking, wow, all the dreams, all the hopes, all the plans, like tomorrow's not promised. Celebrate the moments that you have right now, because literally fame, fortune, notoriety, money means absolutely nothing. We got to celebrate the things that matter while we still have time. So yeah, that hit me hard at the beginning of the year.
So what about you, Joel? When you hear Kobe?
Yeah, I love that, Pierre. I remember when the news first hit, and I just sat there and I thought about, you sometimes think about this person as just a basketball player. And then when somebody leaves this earth, you start to really understand who they really are. And, all these feeds started coming through, and I started to realize how much of a leader and a father he was. And that's when it hit me. It started really hitting me when I started to understand like what kind of a leader he was to his team, but not just that, but his team at home as well, And so that's when it hit me. I looked at my kids, and my kids are 5 and 7. And I started thinking like, hopes and dreams, just like you said, Pierre, hopes and dreams and things of that, what they wanted to do. And, how am I going to help fulfill those things and be a better father after this? Because I think we can all learn from this whole tragedy is how to be more intentional, with our children, how to be more just there and communicate with them. And one of my friends told me yesterday, it's funny because I think sometimes we always remember the first time our kids do something, but we never remember the last time they did something, And I always look at that and I think about it. I want to remember the last time they called me Dada, Now they're calling me like, what up, Pops? You know what I'm saying? So you want to remember those things. And so, Kobe Bryant, the whole situation for me, I think it was a turning point for us in the beginning of this year for sure.
Yo, Julian,
go ahead.
I was talking to someone, Chuck Gatica, childhood. I watched him on TV as a kid. He was the weatherman for the local NBC television station, Grammy Award winning broadcaster. Yeah. I'm having a conversation with him on the podcast, and he said he's working to help people understand the magnitude of second half significance. Where you had an incredible career in one sector of life. And some people think life is over because I've done something for 20 and 30 years. And he said, for most people, a second half of life is beginning. And when I looked at Kobe, I'm a big Kobe Bryant fan, big Kobe Bryant fan. I was so excited about Kobe's second half significance.
Dude won a Grammy. He won a Grammy.
About what he was getting ready to do.
Yeah.
After the playing career, the sports academy, teaching his daughter, I believe, who would have been one of the baddest basketball players on the planet.
Yes.
What was coming next, even though he was no longer on the top of the NBA. And I think, man, like we look at certain sections of life where maybe we had a career or, you know, some amazing things that happened in our family. And we're like, yo, I wish I could get back to those moments.
Exactly.
And sometimes like, nah, it's greater is coming.
Yes.
To what you experienced in the first half, and you leverage it for the second half. So I was like, man, I won't get to see what Kobe could have become, but then it was sobering because it was like, okay, Pierre, you're almost 40. What's your second half significance going to be?
That's good, man.
That's a good question, and it's very sobering. Yo, so Chris, man, what do you think about Kobe Bryant?
So you know, I'm not into basketball much. I think I'm more surrounded I'm more attracted by the narratives of players versus being a fan of a team. So you know, I'm from Miami. Am I a Heat's fan by default? You know, like I actually, you know, it's weird, but I'm that guy. You know, like put the playoffs on. I will watch the playoffs because for me, the playoffs tells a very strong narrative from the NBA brackets to like you can follow what's actually going on. That's really when I tune in to watch basketball the most, when I'm probably the most invested. So when I think about Kobe Bryant, the first three things that came to mind immediately, first was death. Like just, you know, this is probably going to be the most simplistic reflection of the four, but death came to mind first, then greatness, and then practice. I came across I think it was a quote or a video recently.
You see why he's the Renaissance man?
Oh my goodness. They talked about how he practiced and he said that practice is supposed to hurt. Like if it doesn't hurt, then you know, what's the point? What's the point of trying to show up to perform when you didn't break yourself or you didn't hit the breaking point in practice? I said, wow, okay, that really that stuck with me. It leads to why he was considered a very great, not just basketball player, but he had a mindset that allowed him, like Pierre was talking about, the second half significance. Like he was the principles that he practiced, that he implemented, that he used in basketball wasn't for basketball only. And I think that's why he's also considered great. But the first one is death.
Yeah.
No matter how much he practiced, no matter how much significance he might have had in the first half, he couldn't control what the helicopter did. You know, he couldn't control the weather. And so there's always this reminder. I think we only have, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it. It's called this 400 weeks calendar. It's a way to put your life into 4,000. I think it's 4,000 weeks of your entire life. And what you do is every week you just mark, it's like a whole huge big canvas, and you just mark off week by week, and you start to realize in perspective how much time you actually have on this earth. And we don't have much time, let alone when there's an interruption, right? If there's a car accident, if there's something that cuts us out from the second half, you then have to ask yourself, what have I at least started to plant so that somebody else can pick up and take the mantle to just run with if I'm no longer here on this earth? It's sobering. So when I think of Kobe right now, it's a very sobering thought. Inspiring, yeah, but sobering. So.
Wow.
I noticed in the stream, Mirthell commented and said that it was a wake-up call for him. You know, I think a lot of us, we're around the same age.
Exactly.
You know, we're in the same age bracket. And so, you know, just like you said, what if there's an interruption? Because we always think that we have more time. We always think that, you know, I can do it tomorrow or next week or next year, but we really don't know, you know, how many of those, say, 4,000 weeks that we really have. So, you know, I agree with Mirthell saying, you know, it's a wake-up call to just live every day to the fullest and enjoy and then make sure you're leaving a legacy, because I believe that's what Kobe did. He left a legacy, and a lot of it, I think, is what his legacy. Yes, basketball, but I think it's even stronger to me, in January, February, when the news was really harping in on it. The legacy was so much more than what he did on the court.
Yeah.
So, what he was getting ready to do in that second half was really the legacy. And so putting in the time to plant those seeds now while we have the time, so that we're building that legacy. So whoever comes behind us, they reap what we've worked for.
All right. So we're going to move from Kobe. We're going to move to the next word coming up. COVID-19 is not really a word. It's more of like I don't know. What would you call it, Joel? A diagnosis? It's a lifestyle.
It's become a lifestyle now, I guess, right? So you're right. It is kind of a lifestyle now. Shoot.
I mean, anything you say, you can blame almost anything on COVID right now. If you miss a bill, if you make a mistake, COVID, it was COVID, and everybody would kind of get it.
Yeah.
So I think that this was kind of the one seminal event that catapulted not only groups, but business. Every facet of life was adjusted, just like you were talking about, Pierre, just now, how even in-person contact changed. And one of the unique factors about COVID is that, at least in healthcare, from a healthcare perspective, is that it sped up a lot of the things that people had wanted to do. People had wanted to make quick decision-making processes, things like that. People had wanted to ensure that there was continual quality at a high level, but rapid decision-making. And I almost wish, so I'm a trained crisis counselor, and I always say that crisis only brings out what happens naturally. And I think that COVID also exposed some gaps. So if we weren't communicating before, it's going to be hard to kind of get up a communication now. But what do you think of COVID, the whole thing? And I know we can spend a whole broadcast on it, but kind of quickly, what would you say COVID had the experience, and kind of the initial, and then the experience has been like for you?
Yeah, I would say, outside of the loss and the grief that's happened in COVID, and we have to acknowledge that too as well.
Definitely.
I think one of the biggest things you hit it on the head is it actually accelerated innovation a little bit more and technology a little bit more. And so, rapid decision making, and you think about from a healthcare perspective, a lot of doctors and people that you go and see, they wanted to make rapid decisions based on the disease process. And so they've had to do some e-care visits, some virtual care things that had to come into play. And it's things that should have happened 3 or 4 years ago, but this situation actually just accelerated that. And I think that from a healthcare perspective, there's so much more to do, and there's going to be a lot more innovation that's going to be catapulted from this specific time frame. But yeah, I think that's what it comes to mind for me is just the acceleration of innovation, and us doing this right here. I mean, this used to be foreign a couple years ago.
Yeah.
It's an amazing thing to see. You're still creating deep connections with people.
Yeah.
And, even though it's virtual, you're still getting to see them face to face. And what better to even see your provider face to face too as well. So,
what would you say, hon? Thanks, Joel. What would you say, hon?
For me, it was. I think I kind of intimated to it earlier. It was honestly a time for me to just slow down, reflect, and then try new things. And it also was a time for me to build empathy because of the time that we were just so caught up in the grind that I mentioned earlier. I mean, early in the pandemic, our family sort of switched into a tale of two worlds, right? Because my job went virtual and our children's school went virtual, but my husband still had to go into the hospital every day. And so, yeah. And so it was like a tale of two worlds, and being at home, you almost felt helpless to do anything. But then, our children and I, we were just like, we want to support the healthcare workers, the frontline workers, any way that we could. And we started thinking about the families that were in the hospital, but no visitors could come in. And so my girls started creating inspirational messages and coloring them and sending them to the hospital with Julian, just to give to those patients and the healthcare workers who were in there, but we couldn't get to them, you know? So it created an opportunity, not just for myself, but also with our children to find ways. You know, we volunteered at drive-through, my children and I, we volunteered at, you know, drive-through food giveaways and all of that. I mean, it's been a way to help them to connect with others, even while we're in isolation, as ironic as that is.
Yeah, that's a great point, honey. I think that being able to I took one of those pictures to the COVID floor, and these people were like so thankful. They had just messages that said, "I love you. You are brave. You are strong," giving them to patients and to staff, and they were really appreciated. What about you, Chris, man? What was COVID-19 when you kind of hear the experience of it, the initial part, and then what the experience has been like for you this far?
WFH. I don't know if that's a key word that you have, but work from home. That is definitely pushed a lot of us who. So a little bit of backstory. When I moved back home, I was working from home, and then it was like, I need a community. I actually started Ubering, not just for consistent revenue or an additional stream of revenue, but more so because I needed to reconnect with people. I'm sitting in the house all day doing web work. LinkedIn is only so it can only do so much. I actually needed to connect with individuals, you know. So I'm Ubering, I'm killing the game too, right? And then I realized I need to find a community of individuals who are like me, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, people who are trying to build something. Where are they? Where do they exist? So enter WeWork, you know, enter the co-working space. So, you know, a lot of us are familiar with those kind of spaces. So that's what I ended up doing for a couple of years, and really started to get very deep into it, like being a part of the startup community now, because they have like a separate, you know, program in the WeWork thing. So I'm like now a part of founders, not just people who are freelancers, but now I'm part of founders, and I'm understanding what a startup. Great. Hitting the ground running, and then COVID hits. Right. It felt as if not only did I lose the community, we tried to meet virtually, but it was almost like a reset. So for me, COVID wasn't, I wouldn't use the word reset. I think in the beginning I might have, you know, feeling like I've started all over, but I think that it was just, I would say it's a reset. But you know what? Here's a thought that I had that made me put things into perspective. The end of 2020 is really the end of a new or an really old now decade of the 2000s, right? So I can't really just pinpoint COVID and necessarily blame COVID or use COVID as the and I think Joel hit it as a hindrance versus maybe more of a catalyst for what things have happened. But I'm not just singling out the year. I'm looking at what has happened over the last 10 years of my life, and how has this last year of the 10 really impacted everything. I think if I zoom out just a little bit and I see that, what did I do in the 9 years? What decisions did I make? How was my experience? And to put it all, just to put the cherry on top, then you have a cataclysmic pandemic. What did that do? How did that shape my decade? Did this 1 year impact the last 9? For some people it has, right? For many people it has. But I would beg to suggest that for a lot of us, Joel, you hit it, man. For a lot of us, it was a year that I think probably exposed or exaggerated what happened in the last 9. We weren't really building or sowing seeds in the first 9 years of this decade. I mean, the decade is over. Like, we are entering into decade 3, so to speak, depending on if you believe the year 0 versus year 1 is a new year. The point is
the Renaissance man.
the point is that last 9, like, what did this now final chapter of this decade do for, or expose, or reveal, or help, or hurt? What did it really do? So I'm trying to zoom out now as I'm reflecting on the year, because if I don't, what I would do is I would make 2020 everything, as if everything hinged upon what happened or what I did or what I didn't do in 2020. And that's dangerous. It's dangerous to put a lot of stock into one year when going back to what Pierre was talking about with that second half, what is it called? The second half significance?
Yeah.
Or the most successful entrepreneurs statistically happen after the age of 35.
I think we're in good company, huh?
Very good, right? And I'm here thinking, especially when I was 30, oh man, what's going on? Now I'm 35. Oh man, what's going on? Then COVID hits, Julian, COVID hits. And I said, you know what? This is the year I'm going to finish my UX certification. COVID hits. I said, this is the year I'm going to double up to finish my MBA with a 4.0. COVID hits, and I said, you know what? I think this is the most significant one. I'm going to embrace doing what I am and not trying to do who I think I should be.
Authenticity, yeah.
Listen, man. So as I'm doing that, there are people that have fallen away, and there are people that have been attracted.
Yeah.
And I think that's what COVID has done for me. It's really helped me to pare down what is really important, who is really important, what are the priorities, what really matters in life, and then what am I going to do about it? Who do I want to be? Who am I already that I need to understand that I am, so that I can operate in my identity?
Yo, that's an awesome word, Chris, man. You're the Renaissance man. You set a tone that basically gave a weaving way of putting together both emotions, thoughts, and the reality that we all have, and the experience of being authentic even in difficult moments. But Pierre, what would you say about this year? And then we'll talk about some other things as well.
Yeah, Doc. I've been up this entire week recording a leadership course, recorded at midnight.
Yeah,
releasing it in a couple weeks. And the last section of that course, we talked a little bit about COVID. So when I think about COVID-19, the word that comes to mind is crucible. Who don't know what a crucible is? A crucible is literally the container in which you put precious metals in order to melt them down to be formed and shaped into something else. The crucible is the container that stands the high heat so that the metals can be reformed. And when you think about a crucible, it has a couple of elements. Number one, it's the experience. And a lot of people have a shared experience. We have the shared experience of COVID-19. It's the experience plus the interpretation, but we're not all looking at it the same way. We're coming from different vantage points. So you have your overarching experience plus your interpretation plus your individual factors. Like Chris was saying, what did you do for the past 9 years? Your personality, your behavioral style, your temperament, your physical, mental, social, spiritual health, how you grew up, all of these individual factors combined with the time period in which you lived. Because we've experienced situations like this, worldwide health devastation in previous eras, but what is it like to experience it in this era? The overarching event or experience plus your interpretation plus your individual factors plus your era, that's the crucible, and every crucible presents itself with an opportunity.
Listen, man, this thing is getting deeper and deeper every person we talk about. But I think, man, you're right. It's like the cauldron of progress, the cauldron of innovation, the cauldron of hope, mixed with the pain, the suffering, and the drama of everything. There are a lot of people in the chat who are with us. Sydney Barclay is watching from Portland. Shout out to Portland. The PO is watching. We have Myrthel Mitchell on. Janine Johnson says that COVID-19 fast track becoming authentic and going through the crucible. All facts. So we want to also realize, Pierre, man, that the gifts that were emerged out of this year. I want to shout out to Pierre and also to Chris, man. Every single weekend, I mean, I didn't know how you guys did it, and you all were an inspiration to me. Every single weekend, you have had your worship and word on Friday night and on Saturday afternoon. Something that's been inspirational and encouraging and uplifting. And I want to shout out Joel George. He's one of the best healthcare leaders that I worked with in my career, and one of the best people I know. One of the most awesome people. He and his mother work at the same hospital every single day on the front lines. So we want to shout out to all the healthcare workers on the front lines during COVID-19. Joel, you were going to say something?
Yeah, no, I just loved what Chris said. And, I just wanted to also I think the COVID-19, the whole pandemic, a lot of time we had a little bit of downtime to gather like wise counsel. And that's one of the things that I would love to just like speak into people is this is a time to also gather wise counsel from people that are doing things differently, people that may have more wise counsel than you may have, people that have been through things a little bit differently than you have. This year I got to know my parents even more, just because I had the time to sit down and actually ask them what's their ancestry, what was it like growing up, and wow. And I, those are those things those conversations you would think you would have when you're 13, 14-year-old with your own parents, but yeah. I'm 34 now. I'm having these conversations now, and it's shaping me now. So it was a great time for me to gather that wise counsel. And I think I would challenge anybody. This is a time to learn from people rather than just watch. So
yeah,
that's awesome, man.
Really good.
So the next person I have on here, I got to put him on here, and I'm gonna set it up like this: is that I'm thankful for his life because he changed business. And this man is George Floyd. I want to welcome, before we talk about George Floyd, I want to welcome my man Barone Savoy all the way from the West Coast. Barone is in the house today. What's up, B? How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much, Dr. Johnson and Melissa. Man, look at you all together, man. I love it. I love it. I love it. Man, look, we're on the brink of a new year. I'm excited about it. And so thanks for adding me to the conversation. Looking forward to just kind of sharing part of what it is that I've learned and talking about whatever these great guests that are joined here with you are talking about here tonight. This morning, I should say, this morning.
Yo, so far we talked about Kobe. So you're the only man on the West Coast. So could you just give us a quick reaction to what it was like in Cali? Now we were out there too, but what was like? What did Cali think of Kobe and the whole death of Kobe? Real quickly, then we're gonna move to George Floyd.
Yeah, so I never forget when I found out. I was at a place called Caroline's. I was with my daughters when I heard that Kobe had passed. And really, at the end of the day, he was larger than life. He was the heartbeat of LA beyond the basketball world, beyond the Lakers. I mean, just the whole experience in and of itself was just completely unbelievable. And the questions that come to mind is, things like this don't happen to somebody like Kobe. Things like this don't happen to people who are superstars, people who have access, people who have privilege, people who have power, people who are beyond life itself. So it was a real unbelievable experience to have, especially because you had begun to see him transition from merely being a superstar athlete, a mogul, to being a father who was being super intentional with his daughters. And so out here, it was mourning not just a legend in LA life, not just a legend in the NBA, but for me, what hit hard on that day was that he had a daughter the same age as my daughter.
Wow.
He was a father. He was doing something with his child when it happened. It wasn't for his own business pleasure. He wasn't going to sign some other big deal or whatever the case is. He was going to coach his daughter's game. And he loses its life. And what sat on LA and on me as well, not only was it just a shell shock experience altogether, but that he woke up just like any one of us did to do anything on a regular day. And it ended up being the last day of his life and his daughter and others. And when you kind of kick off 2020 in January, almost a year ago now, with that type of experience, you realize, I got to make every single day count because I just don't know what's going to happen. Little did we know, about 4 or 5 weeks after that, all of our lives are going to change because of the pandemic.
Yo, B, you set it up, man. It's like you've been watching, you've been right on time with that thing. All right. So what we're going to do is talk about George Floyd, man. This guy changed business. And I'm going to tell you why he changed business, because he made the words diversity and inclusion relevant again in business. And when I saw different healthcare companies and corporations basically take stands, there was a nationwide 846 on your knees in healthcare that happened. When I started seeing other people ask questions about what it's like to be Black in America, what it's like to be brown in America, what it's like to be a minority in America, it opened up the door. So, I really thank God for George Floyd's life. It sounds very weird to say that. He's kind of like a Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta Lacks was a lady in Baltimore, Maryland, whose cells were used to actually change healthcare. But the family did not get a whole lot of reparations at all. And still, even now, her cells are used to change the perspective of healthcare and disease process. So I think for like George Floyd's family, his family may not see the total benefit. But I mean, Oakwood University got a George Floyd scholarship, and George Floyd never went to Oakwood. I mean, that's saying a whole lot to me. So what are your thoughts, reactions about George Floyd's life, the death, anything, everything in between?
Yeah, you throwing this out to all of us?
Yeah, everybody, man. It's all one for all. All for one.
Man, when COVID hit, right, I got a letter, an email at least, from every company that I had made a purchase from probably in the past 5 years. We're committed to you. We're going to make sure, as an organization that we take care of your needs and be responsive and practice safe practices and set up standards. We heard so many things from these companies, trying to get my money again. But when we look at the death of George Floyd, it was like, and the repeated nature of, the issues around police brutality, and then the elevation of the Jedis, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. People work in that area. But you heard, like, the only thing you heard was from the minority community asking what was going on, which created a backlash to people, slapping Black Lives Matter on a website or on a wristband. But you didn't hear that same intentionality from organizations that you heard when COVID, first popped off. All the CEOs, all the major marketing directors for these companies, making sure we're committed to keeping you safe during COVID. No one was addressing on a wide scale, major corporations at least, the emotional, social, spiritual trauma that we were dealing with as a nation and as a minority community. And it's like, oh, you care about my money, but you don't care about my humanity. I got it. So the more things change, the more things stay the same. We see a repetitive nature of things in the news cycle. Yeah. Which minority communities, people who are disadvantaged, outcry. The significant individuals who have lots of money, power, influence are silent again and continue to be silent, I guess, to their advantage and to the disadvantage of so many people that they can help.
Man, Pierre, man, you said a word right there. I think a lot of people focus on one aspect of George Floyd's life and death and the narrative around him, but I think you gave a great perspective on some people are still money driven. I would offer that there are people who are awakened to their own conscience that it may have been dormant before. Joel, what do you think, man? What do you think?
Yeah, when the news hit and everything, I kind of looked at it from a perspective of not just a race thing, but also just a heart issue. And I looked at it from that perspective because I think it brought back empathy a little bit more back to society, putting people in other people's shoes. And the two things that I kind of got out of the whole situation too is that the work isn't over. I think there's still work that needs to be done, and we can all do better. Those are the two things that I kind of got from the whole situation, is that we can all do better. We can be more empathetic to people. We can put ourselves in their shoes. We can fight for what we believe in, and at the same time understand that this work is not over, and this is just the beginning of it. And it was bittersweet. It was a moment for me to actually look at my ancestry too. Obviously, not African American, but I come from an Indian background, and
Yeah.
profiling happens all the time in that sense too as well. And so it's one of those things that made me think about the journey for me, and I may not know what my ancestors went through, but I know that was in persecution was there in India, and religious persecution still happens everywhere. And so it really made me think about that, and I think the work isn't over. We still have a long way to go.
Yeah, I think Joel, you just said a word that triggered something in me, and that was the bittersweet aspect of this whole situation. Because to be honest, I'm happy that corporations are being more woke, or they're paying more attention or whatever. But at the same time, there was for me a high level of frustration that you didn't see this all along, because it wasn't like it didn't start with him. It's constant. And I think Pierre said, the trauma is constant. And so for, even just having conversations at that time, especially in the height of the summer, it was very challenging for me, because sometimes I'd be having conversations and I appreciated that, maybe a colleague or a church member or whoever it is, somebody in my community was paying attention now. But I'm like, where have you been? Like, this is not new. And so the bittersweet element was there for me a lot during this whole thing, because I hate that it took us watching, literally watching him in those last moments for people to wake up. That upset me. I won't lie. So.
Yeah, if I could jump in, and I really love what Joe had to say in terms of saying I'm not necessarily Black, but I connected with this particular experience out here in California. We're well under 10% Black out here. And what ended up happening with George Floyd's death, of course, we know, being a part of the Black community, that this has been happening for 400 years. We've seen this type of stuff happen for many, many years. And then the question comes up, how many people died at the hands of police where there wasn't a camera, where there wasn't evidence, where there wasn't these really finite, unescapable, unrefutable types of things that are happening, that have happened to Black and brown bodies throughout time. And now this was a catalytic moment. But not only that, but the timing of it, for the unfortunateness of COVID, the timing of it left everyone at home, pent up, frustrated, ready to, I mean, it was the match. I mean, if there ever was a match, that was the match. I mean, I had my daughters marching in the streets out here with Cali with signs.
We did
saying Black Lives Matter. And then when they looked around, they saw Hispanic, white, people 50 years old, people 70 years old, people who looked nothing like them, that cared and it mattered to them, which communicated that though this certainly is a issue that the Black community has, let's not try to dilute that at all. It was a fact that everybody rallied around this central event, unfortunate and angering as it was, to say, okay, something needs to change. When the organization, because Target Corporation is based out of Minneapolis, for the first time when George Floyd died, they went to the Target that was burned down in that area, in the hood, and they said, you know what? We've never asked the residents that live here from this community what their Target actually needs to look like. And we're headquartered right here in Minneapolis. They started to call them and ask them, what is it that you need? And they got feedback from the community, which was mostly Black in that area, to find out what it was that they needed for their Target to look like, what they needed it to feel like, the people that they needed to employ. None of that would have happened if it wasn't for George Floyd. And that was just one microcosm example of things that corporations did that were trickling down in other things. We could talk about what the NBA players chose to do. We could talk about what many other corporations have committed to do in terms of hiring and empowering Black people within their corporate organizations, all as a result of not just George Floyd, but the hundreds of thousands and thousands and thousands and millions of people that have been mistreated, underpaid, marginalized, murdered, killed, lynched, and anything else in between throughout this time. And it brought about this change in this moment. And people had time and they had energy because they didn't have nowhere else to go.
Nah, you make a good point, Barone, man. That was the match. We're going to be finishing this one off with the Renaissance, man. Go ahead, bring it.
Too much pressure, man. Oh my God. So you know, if I pattern, if I look at my behavior through 2020, just from a social media standpoint, COVID drew me to social media. George Floyd pushed me off of it. I think that, but like literally, I think it was like 6 months after, what was it, May, June? Like I was like, I can't, like the same way that COVID brought out a lot of perspectives is not even the word. I don't even know if the word is ignorance. People who would rather not wear a mask. You know, so the same way that it brought out a lot of interesting behaviors, strategies. I'll use the word perspectives, even from a business standpoint. Pierre talked about it a little bit, where this was the time to, you know, rally around your customers and let them know, hey, listen, we're here for you. Don't leave us, is really what they're trying to say. Mm-hmm. We'll even pause your subscription. Do you know how many companies like, don't worry about it. We would rather take the L for the next few months than to lose you for a lifetime. We got you. Don't worry. And I think that, I'm just still trying to gather my thoughts here, but I think that if Wuhan was like a way to just create disparity for our health as a nation, not as a nation, as the globe, you know, as a worldwide community, Minneapolis would have done that for humanity. You know, I think that there's health on one side, and we can see people's perspectives, people's approaches, and all of that to health. But Minneapolis and George Floyd was about, and I like how the Jedi acronym, you know, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. It was about those. For me, it was about those two things. We've had pandemics before. We've had racial disparities before. Pandemics aren't new. What happened with George Floyd isn't new either. But the interesting thing about this year is these particular events really did a lot, I think, especially because of the technology that we had to kind of pull back the curtains on what people really think. Julian, you mentioned Oakwood creating a scholarship. Man, the amount of people that were just angry. Why would you do that? Why not set up one for somebody more honorable? Yeesh, I had to, you know, somebody said they should have a life event or a memories button or token on Facebook for the amount of times that we didn't reply or didn't comment on certain things. And I know my mind is kind of scattered because it's there's a lot just kind of swirling in what George Floyd meant to me. I will say this: it created a deep sense of duality. A lot of people like to take Martin Luther King's one quote in his The Other America speech. Rebellion is, or I think it's rebellion, right? I think it's rebellion is the language of the unheard.
Yeah, rioting. Yeah,
rioting is the language of the unheard. But it's so much, when you read the entire transcript or when you listen to it, he's first of all saying, listen, I'm not advocating for rioting. I will always be a man of peace, but I'm gonna let America know right now, if we keep going on the way that we keep going on, it's going to be inevitable that language of the unheard will be manifested. And for me, for those of you that have seen, I don't know if you've seen you may not have known her name, Kimberly Jones, famous for the broke the contract line. That when I was listening to the entire video, not just that one part, but when she was breaking down the difference between looting, rioting, and protesting, and then she summed it all up with the analogy to a rigged Monopoly game, and how it's been rigged for us as Black people from since the beginning. And even when we make money, it's not even ours, it's the money that we're paying. She's like, yeah, tear down the Walmart, tear down the big box stores, because what has it done for us? But when she said you broke the contract, I almost broke. There's only been one other time that I broke down because of the feeling of injustice. And sure enough, it was the movie Selma. The bridge scene, and I just couldn't understand it. My mind couldn't compute. I know I'm super logical, so I'm just like, I don't get it. Broke down. When she said you broke the I said, wow, yes, they did. And as a Christian, what do I do?
Man, that's a great question.
I stay on social media long enough. I might choose the wrong thing. So I had to get.
We want you to choose the right thing. We want to shout out to everybody who's watching online, to Shauna K, to my man Jay Kitch, veteran extraordinaire, and also Chaplain Adrian Townsend Benson, who's watching. And we want to talk real quick. We got a few more names to talk about. But what about RBG, the notorious RBG? Just two people on this one. Notorious RBG. Anybody got anything on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her death, her life, anything like that on her?
Yeah, so for RBG, man, listen, I appreciate the story, the narrative of the willingness, the pressure, and the willingness to be who you are in the midst of maybe a context that is nothing like you. Like she was in a place and in a space where her style, the positions that she took, and even in a male-dominated situation in the industry as a justice, that's an extreme amount of pressure. And her commitment to being herself, her commitment to standing on her own opinion, and being okay with people not liking where she came from. I think, along with a lot of things that we've been talking about, in this conversation, it's a reminder that things like integrity and morals and standards, a lot of times they don't win the short game.
That's good.
They don't get you that short advantage. But over the long run, over the long haul, when it all comes out in the wash, you'll be able to see, okay, this was actually the noble way to go. And people who took shortcuts or were trying to take advantage of other people really didn't make out as good as we thought they made out in the beginning. So her life, again, it's about life and legacy and being a catalyst for so many things. So I appreciated her willingness to speak truth to the power structure that she was intimately involved in and had to work with every single day.
All right, honey, what do you think?
I mean, she helped. I guess I'm the only woman on here. So, I can come from that angle that, she helped to advance us, and not perfect. Can't say I agreed with everything. So I'll put that disclaimer on there, but she did advance the cause. And so I resonate with what Pierre just said, just being bold enough and being courageous enough, even when you're in minority in another area. We just finished talking about George Floyd, so the racial minority, but sometimes in a workplace as a female, I could be the minority in certain circles, or, just gender is viewed, women and their glass ceiling, all of this, the stereotypical phrases that we hear. She just really helped to advance things for the gender. And so I appreciate her for that. That would be, my thought on her, and I'll leave it there. I don't want to say the other part.
All right, so we're going to go forward. We're going to go forward on Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and we're going to shift gears real quick here. and we're gonna shift to Eddie Van Halen. And yo, the dude could play the guitar. I mean, he was a guitarist virtuoso. Yo, B, I know you weren't ready for that one. I know you weren't ready for that. Yo, B,
I don't think anybody was ready for Van Halen, man.
That was a hard shift. We went from deep and serious.
Hold on. Let me see.
yo, that's how the year was, man.
Is it in the script, man? It wasn't in the script, man. It wasn't in the script. But look, Van Halen, he was a legend, man. I mean, how many countless kids throughout the 90s had Van Halen t-shirts, right? His music was really the soundtrack for many millions of people throughout the world and of course throughout the nation. And it's always whenever you start seeing legends die like that, like he was in the eyes of so many people in rock and roll and metal and whatever else he might have played, it's just it's a sad thing. But once again, it underscores the brevity of life and the value of it, and people who grow up and they chase their dreams, they do it, they become larger than life. They become heroes to other people, and who knows how many other countless people he's inspired. Van Halen, the band, inspired to just kind of pursue their musical dreams. And so, wow, that's all I got, man. That's all I got. I can Google a few of the songs. I'm sure you all know a few of them. Don't act like you don't know any Van Halen, man. Come on, we all know some Van Halen stuff. Come on, Joe, you know some Van Halen stuff.
Yo, Joe, man. I got a question for you. Yo, so yes, you sir. Are my wife. West Indian, you're Indian American. So what's up with Kamala Harris, man? What's your thoughts on Kamala Harris?
Hey, man,
being a white VP, how do you feel, man?
So I saw this meme recently. If you know the Indian culture, it's a lot about pushing you to do your best in every single area and occupationally, whatever that is. I saw a meme recently and it said, it had Kamala Harris's picture on there, and there was an Indian parent in the background, and it said, "Oh, only vice president? Why not president?" So you can tell, like, the Indian culture is always like, "Hey, you should have got the A instead of the B. What's wrong with it? Where's the
That joint's pressure filled."
Exactly, but no, it's I'll tell you what, man. I think it's a big testament to, especially my kids. I have 2 girls, and to be able to look and see somebody like that coming from a background like that too as well, and she comes from the Indian background, and it's incredible to see something that they can go look forward to and say, "Hey, look, you have the potential to do the same thing," and so it's exciting for me. My wife is all about it too as well, and I know she's excited for them to actually see something on the television that they can actually look forward to and look up to. So I think it's a great accomplishment for sure.
Man, thank you so much. Yo, we're gonna start to land this plane. We see the airport in view. We're gonna ask everybody to put their tray tables in the upright and locked position, and we're gonna be sweeping the cabin through. Just because you haven't flown in a while, it's just that's the reality. You know what I'm saying? So we're gonna start landing this plane. We're gonna talk. Ask Chris, man, give us maybe a core lesson and a core hope for 21.
Recently, I have come back to the fold of iOS. I've returned to the iOS ecosystem.
Welcome back.
It's a good move.
It has been quite a journey. And one of the things that I realized, it all ties in, is that it just feels as if Android apps were made as an afterthought. I've used it for almost 2 years, so I can speak on this. I've used iOS for 12, took about 2 for Android, and now I'm like refiguring out how to work an iPhone again. It's so weird.
Ansel Paul said, "Welcome home."
And it's been an interesting transition for a few reasons. And I came across, I'm this person, I do Google like the apps versus the apps. So like Chrome versus Safari. What should I really use? Should I use the native browser or the browser that takes up a lot of resources and RAM, and that, StreamYard can only use Chrome and Firefox, right? And I realized that's because I want to make next year about simplicity. Came across this article that talked about, as best as you can, use the native apps, use the apps, the stock apps, the apps that your phone or your computer has come with, because it's probably integrated a little bit more tightly into an ecosystem or for that computer. It's built for the masses. And, if you have a special use that you need to do or whatever, then yeah, go ahead and do. But the point is, try to be as simple as possible. So this person, I'm like an email person. I have this inbox zero by the end of the day kind of mentality. And he said, I use mail because mail should be easy. You look at it, you choose to respond to it, or you remove it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah. Do I really need to snooze it for like a day? Like, is that really that, And I thought about that. I said, you know what? Next year is going to be my year. My word for the year 2021 is going to be simplicity. And the way that I'm going to start with that, and I encourage other people to, is to figure out, who are you? So for next year, I had a choice. Do you want to be, when Patriots was the, was the team, the team no more. Do you want to be Tom Brady or do you want to be Bill Belichick?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to be the quarterback in the spotlight or are you going to be the playmaker on the sidelines?
Mm-hmm.
And I've chosen to be the playmaker on the sidelines. Can I throw a ball? I'm pretty sure I could, but when I really think about the role and identity of individuals, and you mentioned the word, which is why it kind of struck a chord, Renaissance man, is because multi-potentialites are cool, but nobody really, remembers. Well, I'll tread lightly here. The multi-potentialite for multiple things. It's still usually one thing.
Yeah.
Right. Before Kobe's emergence into his second half of his life, of his success, he was really remembered for one thing. Yeah. Let's not get it twisted. Yeah, he was a businessman as well. And yeah, he was philanthropic, but he was really remembered for one thing. And all of the work ethic, the vision, all of that was in basketball.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So for me, I want to keep it simple and I want to be very laser focused and just pour everything into that. And I'm encouraging everybody to, first of all, choose a word. That's my word. You don't have to choose simplicity, but choose a word and focus on that word. My word for 2020 was relentless. I said, I'm going to push back as hard as 2019 pushed me. I did not know 2020 was like, oh yeah. All right, let's go. So yeah, so choose a word and yeah, just focus on that thing. What has God given you for the year coming up? And hold on to that thing dearly and see it happen.
Thank you so much. Yo, Joel, man, do you have a word for us? Lessons learned, hopes for the new year.
Yeah, I think I love what you said too as well. I think what resonates for me for 2021 really is this whole notion and concept of feeding your soul. And for me, it was 2020 was a moment for me to reflect, pause and reflect. And in the Word of God, it's in Sam, it says Selah at the end of every single. That's my daughter's name, actually, Selah. And so, at the end of every single psalm that David sang, and that means to pause and reflect. And I thought I did that in 2020, and I'm going into 2020 with a new notion of just feeding my soul. And the Word of God says, what can profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? And I think that is so important for us going into 2021, is really understanding, not losing identity in Christ. And I think that's really what is going to be the biggest thing for us. That's the only thing we can anchor ourselves on. So
thank you.
Thank you so much. Yo, Barone, man, what you got, man? What you got? Barone produced the whole Selah series. Is available on Pelt Power. You can email him. He produced a whole Selah series. He produced a whole week of broadcasts for International Pastors Conference. So he's a media innovator. But Barone, man, give us your word. Give us your projections for the future.
Yeah, well, first of all, man, thank you so much, Dr. Johnson and Melissa, for this. Built to Thrive was really an inspiration to me. You personally have been an inspiration to me as well. So I just shout out to you. I mean, we go way back to, Edwards Hall, man, Edwards and Peterson Hall, and our time at Oakwood together, along with your wife, Melissa. So thanks for that. Looking forward into 2021, I draw a lot of strength from one thing, and that is the celebrating not what happened to Nate Robinson in the ring, okay? Because he got knocked out. All right, he got knocked out. But here's the thing, and I'm going to read a quote, one of my favorite quotes from an author that I really enjoyed her talk, Brene Brown, about vulnerability, about strength, about really the gifts of imperfection, all of these different things. I'll read one of the quotes that she starts in her book, Daring Greatly. If you haven't read it, really, 2021, all that at the top, one of the top ones on your to read list for 2021 is that he got in the ring and he believed that he was going to win. And here's what it says. It's this. This is what 2020 was about, and pushed me to do some of the things that I did, pushing me to heights and successes that I never even imagined. And it's what will continue to carry me into 2021 as well. It says this is from Theodore Roosevelt's speech in 1910. It says this: "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man," and I'm going to add in to the woman as well, "who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who makes mistakes or who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself or herself in a worthy cause, who at best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the absolute worst, if they fail, at least fails while daring greatly." So, man, 2020, if I wrapped it up, man, and I said I'm going into 2021, I'm going to push myself like never before. I'm not going to climb out of the ring. 2020 may have beat me up in some areas, but that's all right. I'm going to come back stronger, better, wiser, faster, ready to go at it again. I'm going to stay in the ring, and that's what I have for everybody else out there that's watching. Stay in the ring and do great things, because greatness is already in there. You are, watch this, you're built to thrive.
Hey, Pierre, man, thank you so much, bro, for that word, man, because I think what you're saying is that a lot of people have been right at the edge of success, but not pushed themselves to go forward. Right. And I think that daring greatly, push yourself to go forward. Like you said, Nate Robinson, the man got in the ring. I mean, he got his clock knocked out, but the man got in the ring. I mean, I am not in that ring with that man. All right, so Pierre, what you got, man?
Man, I'm mad that Barone took that Built to Thrive. I was going.
You come with something else too.
Listen. So we started with Kobe. So I think it's only fitting that we end with Kobe. And as Kobe got older in his playing career, he realized he just couldn't, he just did not have the capacity just to viciously dunk on people as opposed to the beginning of his career. He recognized that he had to change his game ever so slightly in order to maintain an advantage. You know, he patterned his game so much after Michael Jordan. And one of the things in Michael Jordan's toolkit that was so amazing was the fadeaway jump shot. The fadeaway jump shot is based off of a word, Julian, that you talked about on Built to Thrive. It's based off of the word pivot. I think for so many of us, our heads are down. We're going in a certain direction. And when that direction is cut off, we're still trying to move heaven and earth to continue to go in that direction. And if we only realized with just a slight pivot, we could still get to our destination. We may have to come to it from a different angle, from a different perspective, even from a different methodology. But the slight shift, it's not always like the grand, big, cold 25-point list of resolutions. Sometimes for most of us, it's that slight shift, that slight pivot that gets us going in another direction and ultimately gets us to our destination. And here's the thing. Every basketball player has a pivot foot. But not every basketball player chooses to use that pivot foot in his or her game. And my challenge for myself and my challenge for everyone else is you have the opportunity to pivot. You got to make the decision to do it. And once you start making those little pivots and little shifts, you'll find yourself closer to your destination.
Wow, man, this has been
out on that.
Man, this has been an amazing experience. Hey, honey, any final words you have, and then we have just something else that I want to just share before we close out.
I mean, everybody was giving their words. I know what mine is. I've been planning on mine, but I mean, I feel like we could go out on Pierre's. That was powerful. But for me, I felt like COVID and 2019 pushed us all into these separate little bubbles, right? And isolation and all of those words became things that were trending. But for me, as I move into the new year, my word that I've been just kind of praying over is connection. And that means inwardly for me and, to others, obviously. Because I learned the value of self-care this year. My husband, I started off giving shout outs to him, so I got to give another shout out.
Lift up your man, girl.
He saw a need, and he fulfilled that need, I just, in our home with everybody being here, we were kind of getting on each other, everybody's virtual school. I'm trying to teach virtually, just all these things. I was like, I need a space. So he literally built me a space onto our house, where I could just, be inside, just, reflect, think, have a moment to myself. And it was so helpful. Like I tell him, that's my happy place now, because I can just go there and reflect and I can think. And then that helps me to be stronger for my husband, for my children, for my church, for my job, for everything, for my community. And then, of course, connection with everybody else around, the people, like we started off earlier, just the people that we realize that's what matters. So I really want I want in this year to be more intentional about building those connections, being powerful with those. I mean, my husband knows I was up till 2-something this morning on a call with some friends from high school that we are still tight with, because I just feel like that's what's important now, not the accolades, not this, not getting that done, not getting this done. It's that connection. And so spending my time making those meaningful moments. So.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for your time. I just wanted to put across the bottom here just a few names of significance to all of us throughout the course of this year that have been a blessing, not just to myself, but to others. John Lewis, Walter Pearson, Russell C., Chadwick Boseman, Alex Trebek, Charlie Pride, Sean Connery, C.T. Vivian, Jerry Stiller, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Dr. G. Russell C., Sr. and Jr. both died this year. So we also want to shout out also James Melancon and Barbara Patterson. There's so many others that could be on this list as well. So this year, for me, 2021, 2020 was a year of just trying something, just try it out. And 2021 is the year of progression, building on it. So I look forward to partnering with each of you. And thank you so much, everybody, for taking your time to be here today. It's been a blessing. And thank you for the gift, Joel. Thank you for the gift, Pierre. Thank you for the gift, Buron. Thank you for the gift, Chris. Thank you for the gift, honey, of being here today. And I look forward to being a collaborator with you and being able to push each of your visions to the future. Please know that at Built to Thrive, we're here to support you, here to connect with you, and here to serve. Remember, this is a place to find community, gain connections, experience compassion. I'm Julian Johnson, and I approve this message. We'll see you in 2021. Have a good one.